everyone. Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Daily Show. Feels good to be back in Adam behind the microphone, talking to all of you out there. I appreciate everyone that is joining me tonight. It is the 18th of January, 2022. It is a Tuesday, and I'm back here. I didn't do one yesterday, and after doing these for a little bit now, it's been, I think, a little bit over a week in terms of shows. I've already made the quick decision to do these only on the weekdays. If something important pops up on the weekend and I feel like doing them, maybe I'll pop in and do one on the weekend, a Saturday, Sunday. But for the most part, I think this is going to be a weekdays project and take off for holidays, which is why I wasn't here yesterday for MLK Day. So that's what you're going to get from me. I'm going to continue to do this weekdays, Wednesdays. It'll be obviously a day where you don't get the daily. You'll get the regular Alex Cuesta show with David and myself. But it's going to be a running show. Hopefully, it'll bring you guys a ton of content. It'll be a good time. And we'll continue to just all enjoy it and go on this journey, this magical journey together. So I got a good one for you guys today. We are going to talk about the Fourth Estate. Our journalists, our media operation in the United States, the beautiful, beautiful media operation that we have in the United States, especially the political side, that is perfectly and completely fair to all sides and not split and doesn't produce constant amounts of bogus nonsense all the time. Obviously, I'm being facetious because our media is laughable at this point. And that's not just when I'm talking about the corporate media, the media on the left, but also a good amount of the media that is supposed to be right, but ends up being more center right. And some of it's just straight up propaganda and unwatchable and unlistenable and just as bad. So it's just the state of media in general is pretty terrible right now. I guess I'm adding to it with this type of show, but hopefully what I'm doing here is a little different, where I'm kind of looking at things and picking them apart and kind of bringing them back into reality a little bit, or if I agree with it, saying why I agree with it, and, maybe picking apart some points of it, but overall trying to be mindful of all the things that are going on in the media and trying not to be like the media and the way that they do things. So this today, like I said, we are going to talk about our Fourth Estate and what they like to do lately. I want to say as of 2015 now, 2014, since Donald Trump really announced his candidacy, it has been on overdrive of the created narratives. Now, we have always seen the creative narrative, the created narratives, especially coming from the left. I think conservative talk show host Sean Hannity says it the best when he says, every election cycle, you're going to hear the same exact things: xenophobe, homophobe, Islamophobe. They hate your kids. They want to take grandma, throw her off the cliff if you are a candidate on the right. It's the same exact playbook. Again, I forgot to say racist. We're definitely racist and sexist. It's the same playbook for anyone that's a Republican, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference what they stand for, who they are, what their religion is, what their skin color is, what their sexuality is. It really doesn't matter because they kind of go at it all in the same way. It's just one monolith that they put all people on the right. So creating narratives has never been anything that is new. And don't get me wrong, the right did it themselves. They do it all the time. When you had the Benghazi issue with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, now completely unemployed Hillary Clinton, but she was, accused of overseeing Benghazi by the people on the right. They held the committee. They didn't find anything. It still goes on. She still oversaw Benghazi. There was still blood on that woman's hands, but it ended up being a lot of much ado about nothing, according to Congress. But again, the right people on the right made a pretty big deal about it and still haven't let it go. It's still mentioned all the time. So building narratives is nothing new in media. Now, what is new is the blitzkrieg in the way the narratives are, I guess, reciprocated and brought out. Normally, the biggest way that you would see a lot of these narratives pushed is they would kind of all hinge on the same major talking point, but you would at least see differences in perspectives coming from, all sides. And you would get the same face thing, like, basically George W. Bush was a good example. George W. Bush is a warmonger who lied about weapons of mass destruction. That is a big thing. He lied about that as a precursor for getting into the war on terror. Now, that was a global narrative that is, now widely spread because it became mainstream, but it wasn't all, the talking points weren't all verbatim. You had some varying degrees of how far they wanted to go after George W. Bush on this. Now, people forget how vicious the media was to George W. Bush. He didn't fight back. And I think that's the thing with Trump that he did, and which is why the media pushed back even harder. The media did not start out any harder on Trump than they were on any Republican, especially one that wins. Difference is Trump punched back. Others do not. George W. Bush did not punch back. So he became a kind of a punching bag, and they said what they wanted to say, but there was more of a varying criticism about him. There was, the main one, and they kept cycling, he did it for daddy. That was another big one. A big one was revenge for daddy. He was a war hawk, but there was a genuine feeling that he got in there for the right reasons, because after 9/11, he was going to try and fight a war on terror to help liberate and spread democracy, which, whether you agree with it or not, that seemed to be the mission that everyone was on board with. And then it all soured. But I digress from that. There was more varying degrees to the criticism and more creative criticism of George W. Bush and others in the past. Now it seems like the major leftist media quite literally gets handed bullet point talking memos verbatim, and they use them exactly in the way that they are told to say them. They have no creativity in how they say things, and they all just go on and quite literally regurgitate the same exact thing. We can go back to sticking with the Trump years. We can go with the Steele dossier, the dossier by Michael Steele that was, foolproof into getting the Mueller report, and also the whole entire Russia collusion thing. They're all kind of in one, but you heard the same exact talking points with Russian collusion, that Trump's ties to Russia with the business. He was potentially opening up a Trump in Moscow before running, and his ties are tight. He's a Putin puppet. The Steele dossier, Ritz-Carlton peeing on a bed, had hookers peeing on a bed where Michelle and Barack Obama once stayed. He had all these connections with Russia. He was giving all this stuff and plans to Russia. And then with the Mueller report, the most annoying thing that you heard from the leftist media, whether it was New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, MSNBC, or any just leftist commentator, even on Fox News and such, you would hear the phrase, "The walls are closing in. Trump White House in crisis." Those were constant. And it was just regurgitated verbatim nonsense. And maybe the worst one, well, one of the worst ones, two of the worst, the Covington Catholic situation, where the kid just stood there as the guy, Native American guy, stabbed in his face, chanting and banging a drum for no good reason. The guy was a dick. I don't know why we didn't acknowledge that the guy was just a dickhead doing that to a high school kid. Instead, we blame the white high school kid because he was wearing a Trump hat. But they went with the fact that the kid's a racist. His smirk, his face is punchable. And, he's a racist. He's a racist. He's a racist. The indigenous guy was right. Blah, 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 blah. And it ended up that they all just got sued to Bethlehem. And whatchamacall, Nicholas Sandmann is now a rich man because of what happened to him. But it doesn't stop. We see with the most recent stuff, the January 6th, 2021, the nonsense that went on at the Capitol, the riot that happened at the Capitol, where, I feel like most conservatives are solid on this and most people on the right are solid on this. Whoever broke the law should have what is coming to them under the law. They should be prosecuted. It was not an insurrection. They are not domestic terrorists, but you wouldn't know that by looking at blue check marks on Twitter or watching CNN or watching MSNBC or even George Stephanopoulos and ABC World News Tonight. They all bring that up. And it was an insurrection. You've heard that 1,000 times. An insurrection with no weapons. Great. Oh no, Alex, there were bombs planted everywhere. They found them. They have never connected the bombs to the insurrectionists, as far as I've known it, or quote unquote insurrectionists, I should call them. They have never connected that. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong on that, somebody let me know that I'm wrong there and I will stand corrected. But in terms of the people that came in, the most egregious guy had zip ties on him. Zip ties. In a hall of 300 plus people where there was a lot of middle-aged fit men, they were scared of zip ties and grandmas and a dude dressed up as a Viking that looked fucking stupid. That's what they were scared of. So no, it wasn't an insurrection. No, they're not domestic terrorists. Domestic terrorists was the Weather Underground when they bombed Capitol building, when they actually bombed it. When the woman who oversees now Four Winds or something, one of the financing arms of the Black Lives Matter organization, when she was a part of the Weather Underground, she was pardoned by Clinton, I believe, and she bombed the Capitol building. That was domestic terrorism. Storming into it like a bunch of morons, breaking some shit, entering in, scary, stupid, could have been really bad. There was a life loss. Ashley Babbitt was shot because she was entering into a window with a backpack. I know a lot of conservatives will break ranks on me with that, saying she shouldn't have been shot. Maybe not, but you were told not to go in. You went in with the backpack. What did you expect to happen? There was a lot of chaos going on. Nobody knew what actually was going on. But as the dust settles, that was not an insurrection. It was not domestic terrorism. But like I've been saying, the media paints a picture, and that's the one they've been going with. And now, as we come on to today, over the last few days, the media got the memo and they are painting a new type of picture. Of course, it revolves around Donald Trump. If it didn't revolve around Donald Trump, none of these places would have any ratings because they're boring as shit. But what it revolves around now is not only Donald Trump, but also Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. If you search right now in either Bing or DuckDuckGo, they have the same exact server. DuckDuckGo uses Bing's search engine, or through Google, just go and search DeSantis Trump, just DeSantis space Trump. If you go into Google, you'll see right away top stories. Axios, Trump dogs dull DeSantis ahead of potential 2024 matchup. New York Times, who is king of Florida? Tensions rise between Trump and Ron DeSantis. The Hill, Trump and DeSantis tensions ratchet up. NBC News, Trump's advisors point the finger at McConnell as reports of DeSantis feud, blah, blah, blah. But I digress. Continue. CNN here. DeSantis could be a threat to Trump's campaign. Here's why. What do you see? They are trying to set up the narrative not only that there is a rift between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, who has been one of the guys that has been his supporters. And if you read a bunch of these articles, I unfortunately read a bunch of them. All the reporting stems back from a New York Times article and an Axios article. That is where their reporting comes from. And what it says to me, it says a few things. We're going to go ahead first. Actually, let's go ahead. Let's read the article. I'll pick it apart there. And then I'll tell you what this whole entire created Trump versus DeSantis feud that doesn't exist, mind you. I believe that they were this summer. I believe that they were seen with the picture at Mar-a-Lago or something, hanging out together. I don't think there's a rift there. Is there some tension? Maybe because they're potential rivals, but I think they're still pretty much allies on mostly everything because the left is insane. But let's do the Axios article. It's a quick one. It's mostly bullet points, so it's a real easy read. I recommend if you're curious about this, go read this one because it's all bullet points. It's in the article is Trump dogs, quote, dull DeSantis ahead of potential 2024 matchup. This is written by Jonathan Swan, again, Axios. Quick aside I have to say about Axios. Axios is a left-leaning publication. That is not a secret. I do have to say, though, out of all of the major news outlets, if you want to say, they have easily been the best at attempting to at least be fair. They have done a good job of pissing off both sides very often. And to me, if you are pissing off both sides, then you are doing something right. You're not there to lapdog to one side or the other. And granted, Axios is more left-leaning. They do have more articles that are, detracting on the right from left-leaning writers. But there is a handful there that are brave enough. And credit to Axios. Credit to the editors there, credit to the owner there, who gives the green light on some of these articles that are very damaging to the left in the things that they say, and hold big positions on the populist right that the populist right would agree with, and even the neocon and paleoconservative right. So, and even libertarians. So good on Axios, even though I don't like this article particular, because I think it sets up a narrative and they help do it. Overall, Axios has been one of the better ones, if not the best, in terms of pissing off both sides. So, all right, let's continue with the article. Trump dogs dull DeSantis ahead of potential 2024 matchup, written by Jonathan Swan. All right, let's go. Donald Trump is trashing Ron DeSantis in private as an ingrate with a dull personality and no realistic chance of beating him in a potential 2024 showdown, according to sources who've recently talked to the former president about the Florida governor. So right there, that first paragraph, that's how you know this whole thing is already bullshit. Jonathan Swan and maybe a few editors made a lot of this shit up. Or they talked to other writers in other places and made a lot of this up. I'm telling you right now, most of this isn't true. Whenever you're seeing, according to sources who have recently talked to the former president, or according to sources who know his thinking, or according to sources that anything like that is nonsense. They make this up. This isn't real. So we'll read it because it's setting the narrative and people are running with it, and blue checks and a lot of these journalists of major publications are running with this. So it is going to have an impact. Just to know from the jump, it's bullshit. Let's continue. Why it matters. The two are among the most popular Republicans in the country. And as the former president has another run in 2024, he's irked by DeSantis' popularity and refusal to rule out running against him. And then we go into some bullet points. There's three here. 1, DeSantis is a favorite of Republican voters when pollsters remove Trump from the hypothetical 2024 field. The governor also hasn't been beyond tweaking his fellow Floridian. DeSantis said on the Ruthless podcast, recorded Thursday, one of his biggest regrets in office was not speaking out much louder in the March 2020 when Trump advised the American public to stay away to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Now, they leave out there, conveniently, that DeSantis was in one of the ones that was actually guiding Donald Trump, and one of his advisors during the early part of the COVID break, that they were in very close contact at all times throughout this. So it's not like he's saying that he regrets not speaking out much louder in terms that he didn't say anything, or in terms that, Trump was ignoring him and that he had to yell out to get heard. No, he was there talking. And his biggest regret is that, he didn't make a bigger case about not doing it. Now, that could be pandering, that could be playing to voter base, but there's context there that, that people need to know. All right, so let's go behind the scenes. In the context of the 2024 election, he usually gives DeSantis a pop in the nose in the middle of that type of conversation, said a source who recently spoke to Trump about DeSantis. Okay, bullshit again. That's not true. Definitely not true. They're making this up. The source who shared the private remarks on the condition of anonymity has heard Trump criticize DeSantis on multiple occasions. This source said Trump makes a point of saying he isn't worried about the Florida governor as a potential 2024 rival. Quote, he says DeSantis has no personal charisma and has a dull personality, end quote, the source added. A spokesman for Trump did not comment when presented with this reporting. Spokesman for Trump didn't comment because it's nonsense. That's why. Because a lot of it's nonsense. Do I doubt that Trump didn't say this stuff? No, I don't, because that's Trump. Trump talks shit. That's what he does. He's that type of guy. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm not continuing. This is so easy to do to Donald Trump from these news sources because he had so many leaks in his government, because he didn't fire everyone, go in and fire every single holdover like every other president does. He didn't do that. So he left a lot of stupid Barack Obama loyalists, and they really threw him under the bus constantly when it should have been a much more closed door in his administration and in his White House. That was arguably his biggest mistake, not going in and clearing house. But that just showed his inexperience as a politician, which we should appreciate more than we don't, that he was not an experienced politician going in. Let's continue here. A second source who's discussed DeSantis with Trump said the reason for the former president's irritation with the popular governor is, quote, that Ron DeSantis won't say he won't run in 2024. The others have stated pretty clear that they won't challenge him. DeSantis also did not respond to requests for comment. So here's the thing. It became pretty clear from a lot of people that have talked about Trump since the presidency, and even when he was in it, that Trump only really talks to a few people. He did it in the presidency. I don't think he's going around making a bunch of friends now that he's really unloading with. Trump really only, they said he only talked to a few people. He talked to Jared Kushner. He talked to Ivanka. He'll talk to Don Jr. He'll talk to Eric. Obviously, his chief of staff, whether it was Mick Mulvaney or Mark Meadows, he keeps it very tight. And if he thinks you're an idiot or he thinks you're going to betray him, he's not going to talk to you. So I don't see him giving up a lot of these quotes. And if he does, he's going to know it's coming from somebody in his close circle. And I can't see a lot of these people in his close circle giving it up. Maybe that's me being naive, but I don't see it. Let's go between the lines. Several potential 2024 GOP contenders have either ruled out running if Trump does, as his former UN ambassador Nikki Haley did, or said they would support Trump if he runs. Bullet points here. That's been the case for South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and Senators Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, Tim Scott, and Josh Hawley. Trump has kept a close eye on these statements. He's noticed that two potential rivals in particular have declined to rule out running: DeSantis and former Vice President Mike Pence. Trump seems less bothered by Pence than DeSantis. He's told advisors that he thinks Pence's future in the GOP politics is over after he abided by the Constitution and refused Trump's request to send electors back to the states on January 6, 2021. Other potential rivals who haven't ruled out challenging Trump include former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Senators Cruz from Texas, Ted Cruz, and Tom Cotton. I'll tell you right now, Cruz and Cotton aren't running, and I don't think Pompeo is running unless Trump doesn't. I also, if I remember correctly, DeSantis has said something that he's focused on governor, and the only way he'll run for the country is if Donald Trump decides not to run. So I think he has made something like that statement in the past. I think, he's kind of alluded, he's just focused on the governorship since Trump is going to be probably going to be the guy. He hasn't even given it a thought. So that's kind of where I'm pretty sure I've heard that. Maybe I'm making that up. I need to go find that. But as far as I know, all DeSantis is focused on is governorship. Let's continue. The second source said that in Trump's view, there is no way DeSantis will be governor without Trump's endorsement. There's a few articles that have played on this one. They love this one. The former president also said something to the effect of, what's the big deal? Why won't he just say he's not going to run against me? The New York Times' Maggie Haberman reported recently that Trump has been telling a range of aides a version of, he isn't getting the deference from DeSantis that he wants in the pre-2024 lead up. Again, I don't believe any of this. Why should we believe any of this? Why should we believe Maggie Haberman? Why? There's, they say quotes that sounds like Trump. It's easy to sound like Donald Trump after now hearing his cadence and how he speaks, but I'm not buying it. Just not buying it. Let's continue. Trump's private irritation about what he perceives as DeSantis' ungratefulness and willingness to defy him date back several years. Their disputes have ranged over matters such as varied as closing beaches during the early days of the pandemic and a public clash over hurricane death statistics, as the Washington Post, Ben Terrace, and Josh Jowdy detailed in the 2020 story. Bullet point. DeSantis claimed on the Ruthless podcast last week that the reports of tensions between him and Trump were a media invention. In the same conversation, he again sidestepped a question about his strength as a potential GOP president nominee in 2024. So again, he downplayed it. It's a media invention, which it is. He's right. And, again, sidestepped the question. Why would he say no? Here's the deal. Say something happens to Donald Trump's health, or say Donald Trump at the last second says, I'm not going to run. I'm out. The people that have already come out and said, I won't run because Donald Trump is running, are already a black eye if they start to run it, if they really pick it up there, because they're going to be looked at. The Trump supporters are going to not support them. They're going to like them initially, but at the same time, they're going to look at them and go, you already took their names out. And it also hurts for fundraising. There needs to be contingency plans. If something happens to Donald Trump for the 2024 election, there needs to be the Mike Pompeos, the Ted Cruzes, the Tom Cottons, the Ron DeSantises to be there and pick it up right away. So there's nothing wrong with DeSantis not saying whether he's going to run or not definitively. And I don't think Trump is that sore about it. I think it's nonsense. All right, let's close this article out. What we're seeing, Trump's frustrations with DeSantis have been bleeding into his public statements, though he's refrained, so far, from attacking the popular government by name. During a recent OAN interview, the former president said he'd watched interviews with gutless politicians who refused to say whether they've had the booster shot. You got to say it. Whether you had it or not, Trump said, say it. As media noted, DeSantis has refused to say whether he's received the booster shot. I've done whatever I did, he said in December when asked if he's been boosted, the normal shot. So that could be a conflict. It definitely could be something where Trump is taking a shot. I don't think it's anything Trump probably hasn't said to Ron DeSantis already, to be quite honest. That's why I think it's a nothing burger. I can't see Trump not saying to DeSantis, listen, you killing me. Just go get the shot. Just go get the booster. I'm trying to promote it here. What are you doing? And DeSantis telling him to kick rocks, because the difference is people can have a few, some different things on. That's why we're free here. And Trump has said over and over and over and over especially since the vaccines have come out, everyone should go get the vaccine. But if you don't want to, don't. And he's the same thing. I think everybody should get boosted. That's what he's saying. I think everyone should. He's not saying they have to. He's not saying you better. He's saying they should. And DeSantis is on the same page. Go get the booster if you want to. Go get the shot if you want to. We also have monoclonal antibodies that save lives as well if you get sick. Boom. That's the stances. It's as simple as that. So if you read into this, they are creating a rift where it isn't there. Now, my theory about what's going on here, they know they're about to be in a bloodbath in the midterms in 2022 this year. They are about to be in a bloodbath. I refuse to call it a red wave because I hate the stupid wave terms. I think they're dumb, number one. And number two, I'm tired of labeling red and blue state because that is another media invention to polarize. Did you guys know that back in the day, I got to look this up more because I'm going to come back with the actual fact. There was no such thing as red and blue states. Not even too long ago. I think it's less than like 30, 40 years ago. No such thing as red and blue states. They used to use red and blue to say who won a state, but they would switch every election, who was red and who was blue, whether it was Democrat or Republican. This is a fairly new media creation, and it is created like they do for everything else to create tribes. So we can say we're a red state, or we can say we're a blue state, or we could say, I vote red or I vote blue. It's another identifier that we need to get away from. So no, it's not going to be a red wave. It's just going to be a bloodbath of republicanism and conservatism, which I guess blood is red. It's blue initially in the body. When it comes out, it's red. So maybe it's a mix of both there, just playing around. But it should be bad for them in 2022. They're now up to, I think, 28 resignations or people that won't run coming for the next election, as opposed to like 5 or 4 on the right. And that's in the House, I believe, alone. They're hoping for a 50-50 Senate again, which I don't think they're going to get because I think the Republicans will pick up there. I can see an actual majority in both the House and the Senate for the Republicans, which is why they're so trying to push voters' rights through in the Senate, and so they can get it right to the House now, which they're so trying to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate so they can push it through because they don't want to leave it up to chance, because they know there's a good chance that these Democrats that are there now will not be there come January in 2023. And they are scared straight of that. That is the first reason why they are doing something like this, because they are nervous and they are trying to take our eyes away from that and bring it back to the presidential politics here. Number 2, they are scared shitless of Donald Trump still. He scares them. They know that his popularity is still at an all-time high, even though people say it's not. People are souring on Trump, this and that. That's not true. Trump's base is his base. He's a very open-speaking guy, and that's what people like about him. I don't think he's losing the Spanish vote because the Democrats have nobody good to run against him. If they run Biden again, he's going to win the Cuban side of Miami again. and Trump's going to pick up a bigger coalition because Joe Biden sucks. If Trump and Biden run again, I'm predicting a landslide. And if it's not a landslide for Donald Trump, then he either did something terribly wrong or there was an actual cheating going on. Because there's no way with Biden's current record that he has anything to run on against Donald Trump. And they are scared shitless of the man. They know Trump is a real threat again. So they are creating this rift to either distract him away from campaigning against Joe Biden directly or because they just want to get people to think that there's somebody else out there that can challenge him and is making him worried and all this nonsense. And also, I think that they're doing this because they think they can handle DeSantis. Remember, DeSantis was in Washington already. He's a founding member of the Freedom Caucus, so it's not like he's a pushover. They are outspoken. He was in the House from, I think it was 2013 to 2018. So he's not a guy unafraid of mixing it up, being a creator of the Freedom Caucus and a very loud and outspoken, big reason why the neocon John Boehner was kicked out of the speakership. So it's not like he's not a brash dude, but at the same time, he's been in Washington already. The media has dealt with him. They're trying to figure out new ways to go at him now. So I think they can control DeSantis because he is a political guy and he's a politician, and they're scared of Trump, which is why these narratives are creating now. Let's get a rift in between them, and let's not allow them to be on a ticket. That's got to be the other reason. Let's create this rift and make it so bad that they start infighting, and then we don't have to deal with a Trump DeSantis potential ticket. That's another reason why this is happening. Because the fourth estate is trying to do what they do. They're leading a propaganda arm to create an issue that's not there just so they can try and have an impact and an effect. The problem is, I don't think it's going to work on these two. They both hate the media enough. They both don't trust the media enough. They're both in Florida, and they are both a phone call away from each other to hash it out. And I don't think these two are above a phone call away to hash it out. So I can't predict what goes on from now until, next year, 2023 or middle of this year when, DeSantis either confirms or, bows out of the gubernatorial race or wins and still comes in and says, I want to be president, or says definitively, no, I won the governorship again. I'm not going to do it. And maybe he's waiting to see what happens in the governorship. Maybe if he loses, he runs for president. Maybe if he wins, he really sits tight. But we don't know what's going to happen from then till now. But I don't think it's what this media is saying about it because, man, when you see these many sources saying the same exact thing, and I only read to you a few, it is up and down the political, especially the leftist spectrum, that they're all saying the same exact thing and they're running with the same exact stories. When it's this obvious, you have to question it. You have to question it when it's this obvious. There was a reason there. There's a narrative that they're creating, and most likely it's bullshit. Usually when that happens, when there's this long narrative, it's complete and total bullshit. So, all right, it's going to close out this episode of the Alex Quest Daily Show. I want to thank everybody for listening. As always, if you liked what you heard, please give me a like, follow, share, subscribe, rate us 5 stars wherever you are. Spread this word of mouth. Tell people that it's fun. Tell people I'm not a complete moron. You'll like the stories I pick. If you have any stories to suggest on a daily, shoot me a message. I'll read it. Maybe I'll use it. And I'll give you the credit if I do, because that's the type of guy that I am. So again, thank you so much. If you want to catch me on the socials or the show, search The Alex Cuesta Show, and you'll find me on any of the socials over there. And as always, I appreciate everybody for listening. I will talk to everybody tomorrow.